Good evening, friends. It's always joyful to be here as we gather twice a week to listen to the truth and the words of wisdom from the great masters. Whether they are from Bible or Bhagavad Gita, it hardly matters because that was the essence of the purpose behind Babaji's mission, actually, that why he sent Yogananda to the West, because these are the one of the greatest religions on the planet as of now. And the Sunday Satsang is all about taking the parallels from these two books. We have a new friend here, so I just wanted to give a little introduction before we begin. So the topic here which is about week 49, and it is taken from Rays of One Light, which is the book that Swamiji wrote purposely to keep this in mind, that we are taking parallels from the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. And the topic here is very interesting. What is it to fail spiritually? Nobody wants a failure of whatever kind. And to fail spiritually actually can become a very significant thing for a devotee. So this is a very important thing Swami is writing about. The first passage is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25. Jesus tells a parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of them wise and 5 foolish. They await their bridegroom, the Christ consciousness. The wise virgins keep the oil in their lamps, symbolic of their devotion, lit through the night. The foolish virgins placed no oil in their lamps. These foolish ones are like the average devotee, going through the motions of outer ritual, but keeping no fire of love burning in the heart. When the bridegroom's coming is announced, the foolish virgins realize their mistake and hasten out to purchase oil. During their absence, the Christ consciousness comes and embraces those who have been awaiting him with devotion. The foolish ones, by their lackluster devotion, are not accepted by him. Watch, therefore, Jesus told his listeners, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda describes the foolish virgin consciousness he encountered in the Mahamandal hermitage he stayed in as a young man in Benares. I was pleased, he wrote, that my new home possessed an attic where I managed to spend the dawn and morning hours. The ashram members, knowing little of meditation practices, thought I should employ my whole time in organizational duties. They gave me praise for my afternoon work in their office. Don't try to catch God so soon. This ridicule accompanied one of my early departures toward the attic. Later, during meditation, I felt lifted as though bodily to a sphere uncircumscribed. Thy Master cometh today. A divine womanly voice came from everywhere and nowhere. This supernal experience was pierced by a shout from a definite locale. A young priest nicknamed Habu was calling me from the downstairs kitchen. Mukunda, enough of meditation. You are needed for an errand. The Divine Mother's words were not spoken for the benefit of that priest, the foolish virgin, but for Mukunda, the wise virgin. For this was the day his Guru, Shri Yukteswar, came to him. Grieve not, friends, if you feel that you have been foolish. No error is forever. Someday, if you keep your lamp lit now, your opportunity will come. In the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, Krishna promises every devotee, Arjuna, none who works for self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny. Spiritual failure, though a deep disappointment, is always temporary. Eternal hellfire is but a projection of vindictiveness in the human mind. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, dear friends, as we are talking about this topic, first of all, the failure, as Swami talks about here, that let us define what can be a failure on the spiritual path. The failure can be when we fail to tune in to God, because we have come here to find God, and that is the only goal for all of us as a devotee. That is what we want. And so if we are failing in that duty, that would be constituted as failure. But the good news is that nobody is a failure on this path, although we could be failing in the moment. Now, what defines that? Because it has something to do with the reality of God Himself. Because God is not to be found in the past or not to be found in the future. God can only be found in the present moment. So whether we are failing or not in our duty also has to be assessed accordingly. What are we doing in the moment? And that will define whether we are failing in that endeavor or not. So the good news is that nobody is a permanent failure, although we could be failing in the moment. The beautiful poem that Yogananda wrote, and these are the words he said there: present, past, future, no more for me, but ever present, all flowing, I everywhere. At 2 points, actually, he talks about the present moment. He wants us to live in the present moment, because that alone can help us to tap into the consciousness. He's giving the example of those the foolish virgins and the virgins with those who were keeping the oil of devotion burning within their hearts. And we will come to that, what does he mean there? That how the Christ consciousness is always available, but at the same time it will steal into our hearts if we are already ready for that. So how, at 2 points where Yogananda is talking about the present moment, is that present, past, future, no more for me, but ever present, all flowing, I everywhere. And then he says, thoughts of all men, past, present, to come. And then he speaks a few lines, then he concludes by saying, I swallowed, transmuted all into a vast ocean of blood of my own one being. Now that indicates that if we have to find God, first of all, we have to live in the present moment, understand that yes, this is the moment, but then how to find God? And then again, if you see, Jesus at one point said, no one can come to Father except through me. Now what does that mean? Does he mean that Christ as a person, Jesus as a person? Because many of us, when great masters, they come to, they reincarnate, sometimes they talk in cryptic language, and but although sometimes they can be very direct and they can give us very clear clues of what we need to do. And here he says, no one can come to Father except through me. Does that mean that Christianity is the only religion in which God can be found? So the good thing that these great masters have clarified for us is that here the Christ does not mean the person, but the Christ consciousness is what he's trying to say. And that is why if we go back to our Raj Yoga classes, the seat of Christ consciousness is the point between these eyebrows, and that is the Kutastha Chaitanya, also the seat of Krishna consciousness. And if you see, in Raj Yoga classes, we are taught that we have to bring our consciousness at this point. And when we are able to bring to this point, then you will not only feel intuitively your oneness with the cosmic being, your oneness with the consciousness, with the Christ consciousness, but there is a nadi which actually takes you from this center to the highest point, which is the Sahasrar, which will take you to the Father consciousness, because the Christ consciousness is the Son, and the Sahasrar will take you to the Father. That is why the Trinity of Father, Son and Holy Ghost we talk about. So Son here is the Christ consciousness, which you can say God's presence in the creation, and then God's presence beyond creation. So that is what Christ wanted to say, or Jesus wanted to say, that no one can come to Father except through me. And then he again, now this may sound a little cryptic clue, but there is another clue which I felt is very direct and which actually doesn't leave anything for any kind of confusion in the mind, where he says, be still and know that ye are God. I mean, Jesus could not have been more clear and succinct and precise about that, because even in the autobiography of a yogi, Master gives us a glimpse in the chapter where he says that I reached the cosmic consciousness, and this is the chapter where Yukteswarji gave him the samadhi experience. He said that no perception of the infinite as one light could be had except by calming those storms. As often as I silenced the natural tumults, I beheld the multitudinous waves of creation melt into one luminescent sea, as the waves of the ocean serenely dissolve into unity. Before that, he says that by daily stilling my thoughts, I could win the release from the delusive conviction that my body was a mass of flesh and bones traversing the hard soil of matter. Now, here, if you see, Yogananda himself is saying that how can a person attain the God consciousness or the supreme consciousness, which ultimately comes from the Guru, but before that we have to prepare ourselves as we do yoga practice and our yoga sadhana. Slowly and slowly it is going to take us to that divine spirit consciousness. And here your master is saying that when we come to this point, slowly and slowly you see your mind will naturally start becoming calmer and it will attain stillness. In fact, Lahadi Mahashaya, if you see the 7 chakras in our spine, in the astral spine, actually gave the vibrations for each of these chakras also. He said the Agya chakra is having vibrations of somewhere between 0 to 9. The chakra which we have here, Vishuddha, has a vibrations of 10 beats per second. Then it is, if you come to the Anahat, it has 100. If you come to the Manipur, it has 1000. If you go to the Swadhisthana, it is 10,000. And at Muladhar, it is 100,000. So depending upon at which chakra our consciousness is, our mind could be oscillating at that high or low frequency. And what Yogananda is telling here is that you cannot even tune in to the divine consciousness until you have stilled the storms, until we have attained that stillness in the mind. That only can take us to that divine consciousness. And here also, if you see Jesus, what is he saying there? Be still and know that ye are God. So all we are doing in our practices of yoga, whether they are Kriya Yoga, we practice Raj Yoga. So Raj Yoga is a better term because Kriya Yoga is a part of Raj Yoga. And when we do that, all we are trying is, we are doing two things. We are trying to withdraw the energy from the outer pursuits to the spine, and within the spine we are trying to uplift the energy and bringing it up into the higher chakras, and especially to the point between the eyebrows where the seat of Christ consciousness is there, the Kutastha Chaitanya. So here, if you see, if let us say we have to define, in fact, a failure, this is the topic for the evening, spiritual failure. Why would, in fact, sometimes I feel what is the greatest responsibility on a teacher's shoulders? Some of you are teachers. I am also a medical teacher. I teach young medical students to the subject of medicine when they are learning to become doctors and specialists. So I feel the job of a teacher is actually to simplify the subject. Otherwise, everything is given in the books also. And if you see, or in other words, if we have to put it, as one of Dean used to say, that the job of a teacher is to kindle the fire in the student, and once the fire is kindled, he will automatically go and find the way out for himself. So it is just that you have ignited the fire in the person. So when people come to our classes, if you see these great teachers, what they were trying to do, they have found their liberation way back. They didn't want anything from us, but they wanted first of all to show us that this human body, you can achieve everything with this, just like they have attained. And so don't waste your lifetime by just limiting by yourself to a reality of flesh and bones. This is what Yogananda is saying here, that my identification with the flesh and bones immediately dissolved when I was uniting myself to the cosmic reality. Now, how this identification, if you see Jyotishji was giving this example, that let us say if a person is in a prison, what would be the most important thing for that man? If let us say he is thinking day in and day out, so the thought probably in his mind would be that when is he going to go out of the prison? Because probably his entire focus will be on the door of the prison, or when those gates will open for me. How can I again enjoy the free air, because I am already in the prison now. And same way, but that is why Yogananda said that we have become so skillful by remaining in a prison that we hardly realize that we are in a prison and we are a prisoner, because cosmic consciousness, when it comes, it descends into the body, it actually gets imprisoned in the flesh and bones. And unless we really understand that we are in prison, we won't even try to escape from it. And that is why the doorway to escape is the seat of the Christ consciousness, or the point between the eyebrows. And if we have to decide whether we are failing or not, it has to be decided in that term, that am I making effort? And that is why if you see, Yogananda gave us a very simple clue. I think if out of all the teachings, if we can just pick up one which he said, and at many times he actually said that if you can just do 1/100th of what I'm telling you to do, you will attain your goal. At another point, he actually said, even 1/1,000,000th of what I'm telling you to do, you will attain your goal. And one of those things which actually is very close to my heart is, he said, if you want to grow spiritually quickly, keep your attention at the point between the eyebrows. Very simple statement. But sometimes, among the hundreds of things that we have learned from our Guru, we are not able to pay attention, but different things could be applicable or could be dear to different people. But for me personally, I feel that if we can do this, and if we can do it with all our attention, all our effort, give 100%. At one point, actually, Yogananda said, do overtime with this teaching. And one of the teachings with which he said actually was Hongso. Hongso is a technique which we know that is a technique to practice concentration. And this is the seat of concentration. And if we practice Hongso at this point and try to keep our attention at this point, you will see how things will start changing for you. The perspective with which we see this life is going to change dramatically. In fact, it reminds me of one person who was there in the hermitage where Yogananda was. And when he listened that Yogananda gave him this clue, that put your mind on the spiritual eye, day in and day out, work hard on this. He decided from that day that I'm going to do this. And for 3 days, he was actually doing it very sincerely. And in just 3 days, he found that he was losing his bodily identification. So much that he had to go to Yogananda that please help me. I am not able to work anymore because my mind, as in this autobiography of a yogi, if you see what Master is saying here, that when the consciousness, when you touch Christ consciousness, how does it feel? He actually gives us these clues. First of all, he says that I cognize the center of the empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart, which is to say that Yogananda gave another definition of God when he said that God is center everywhere and circumference nowhere. What does it mean? That every one of us is actually a center and the whole universe is revolving around that center. But how do we, now intellectually we may have understood it, but how to experience that? And here is one practice where if we keep our attention at the point between the eyebrows, you will see slowly we will tune in to the Christ consciousness, and the more we get absorbed into it, you will see that you can also feel that I cognize the center of the empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart. And later on, he said when he came back from the cosmic consciousness, this experience, how did it feel? He felt suddenly the breath returned to my lungs with the disappointment almost unbearable. I realized that my infinite immensity was lost because he was taken out of the prison. He went into the cosmic consciousness as a liberated bird, But then again he came back into the bodily prison. And then he wrote, "Once more I was limited to the humiliating cage of a body." Look at the artistry of his words. Not easily accommodative to the spirit. Once more I was limited to the humiliating cage of a body, not easily accommodative to the spirit. Like a prodigal child, I had run away from my macrocosmic home and imprisoned myself in a narrow microcosm. So, our home, if we have to believe, is not this tiny body or this brick and mortar home that we have built for ourselves. The true home is actually the whole universe, and even the universe would be falling short, because here in one of the lines he was saying that all space like an iceberg floats within my mental sea. Now even a universe will fall short for you, because this is your true reality. At one point Swamiji said that you are all saints in disguise, because that is the all destiny. That is the destiny for each one of us, that we will find God, and ultimately we will have the same experience what all these great masters had. Nobody's hiding anything from us, but the thing is, are we paying attention and are we making an effort? Because the thing is that first of all, we have to realize that we are in prison. If we are enjoying a prison, I mean, who can help us? If, let us say, a prisoner starts enjoying, then I don't think even a jailer can help doing. And sometimes it happens actually, because people sometimes become so safe or feel safe that they don't want to leave. Now I wanted to actually talk a little bit more, but the time probably won't allow us. But we will continue in the next satsang from here, because the subject is so interesting that first of all, we started with the spiritual failure. What is a failure? Because nobody, Yogananda said, should consider himself as a failure, because that was the reason why he said, you should never call yourself a sinner. Yes, things have been happening in the past, and past, present and future, they are like, pictures in a moving film. And if you take for an instance, let us take this reality, because we keep talking about the present moment, and present moment we say is the only reality. Now, if let us say you have any regret of the past, so when you're thinking about something which has happened in the past and you think, okay, probably I should not have done this or that, or maybe that person should have treated me in a better way or that way. Now that thing has already happened, but when it is affecting you in the present moment. So actually you're spoiling your present by thinking about the past. So even then, if you see that event has passed away, it is no longer there, but what is affecting us is our present. And that is a failure in that moment, because we are keeping God away. By just thinking about some event which has happened in the past, we are not able to commune with the God, because we are so engrossed in our own prison. And similarly for the future, if you see, if you are thinking of any worries of the future will never come. Future never comes actually. Future thing which may or may not happen, and we are worried about it in the present moment, is actually keeping us away from God. Because in the present moment, if we are not in the moment, we are either in the past or in the future, and either way we are failing, because we are keeping God away. So in that regard, one thing was that this is how we define, first of all, spiritual failure. Nobody is a permanent failure. Each moment we have to stay aware, what am I doing now? That kind of awareness we have to build every day, every moment. Just take a moment. With every breath you can do that. What am I doing? Am I going into the past, or am I worrying about the future? If I am not doing that, then what am I doing in the present moment? And if in the present moment I can tune into the God, which can be easily done. Now I won't say easy, but yes, the simple essence of it is that we have to bring our mind to the spiritual eye, to the point between the eyebrows. Why I am not saying it is easy, although it looks simple, is because that we have created so much of momentum in our own mind because of our past habits that it's not going to be easy, but then it is, the more we do, the easier it is going to become. And that is why the techniques that Yogananda ji has given us, that is why we do Kriya. That because Kriya is going to dissolve all those habit patterns which are there in the as vrittis in our spine. And same way, when we tune into a master's consciousness, his magnetism is going to uplift us. That is why we come to the satsangs. The devotee's magnetism is going to help us. And all we are trying to do is to bring our mind into the higher chakras and to come to the Christ consciousness. And then the saying that thine eye is single, his body is full, his body is filled with light. Because if you see the two chants that we played this evening, if we can make God as a pole star, this is our duty, that is how we are going to succeed, then the duality of life is not going to affect us. And duality of life is something which is how the God has actually designed this life that way. It could not have been otherwise. If there is joy, there has to be sorrow. If there is a success, there has to be a failure of some kind or the other. If there is health, there has to be sickness. But then what Yogananda is saying here, again a beautiful line from Autobiography of a Yogi, I'm picking up, that God expects, now this is the expectation from his own children, that souls made in his image shall ultimately rise above all bodily sense identifications and reunite with him. So that's an expectation, that I have created you in my image and you need to behave accordingly. Which is to say that these limitations of prison are going to be there, but the more we come at this point, you will see that everything is made up of light. And then all these, that is why we sang that when thy song flows through me, that becomes beautiful, life becomes beautiful, the death or life, you don't see any difference, both are looking like dreams. Praise and blame don't look like anything special, they look like dream. So that's the point. And so in coming Sunday, I think, or the later Sunday, I'll talk about how to do this. Because yes, this is something which we have learned in principle. There are certain challenges. We can, do a step-by-step thing that how it can become simpler for us. We'll share some stories, but we can conclude this evening by this prayer which we had for the God remembrance. If you see, one of the things in which we had this affirmation for this evening, where Swamiji is saying, and this is a very beautiful line here, one should not strain, not reach outward mentally to think of God. Know that he has been yours always, nearer than your nearest thoughts and feelings, and nearer than the very prayers you offer him. So we just have to feel that he's right here. And when we go into that Christ consciousness, when we keep the mentally, we make this effort again and again, you will see that he's already there. He never went away. The only thing was that all this mental turmoil was creating a cloud which was coming in between, and we were not able to see the space which was right behind it.